What if the most cutting-edge science, the stuff we think is brand new, isn't really new at all? What if it's actually rediscovering ancient wisdom, ideas we might label esoteric?
It's a pretty wild thought, right? Almost
Okay.
feels off limits to even ask.
Exactly. But what if the very foundations of our science deliberately, cut themselves off from a big part of their history, leading to this kind of cosmic amnesia?
Well, that's precisely the core argument in the work we're diving into today. It's called Esoteric Coherence Physics and the Hyperspace Continuum by Philip Randolph Lillian.
Okay.
And Lillian isn't just like drawing philosophical parallels. He's arguing that modern physics has actively obscured its roots in esoteric and spiritual traditions.
Actively obscure them.
Yeah. He claims concepts we think are revolutionary now, things like torsion fields, quantum coherence, actually have, and this is his phrase, long-standing precedents in occult science.
Wow. Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is to really rigorously unpack Lillian's claim here. The idea that far from contradicting scientific rationality, these esoteric insights offer an expanded architecture of reality that completes physics.
Completes physics, not replaces it.
Right, that's a key distinction. He's not trying to tear science down. He wants to build on it, make it whole again. And he introduces this, what is it? The hypersymmetry, hyperspace coherence resonance theory of everything.
That's the one, HHCR-ToE for short. He presents it as a new meta-framework for unification, a grand synthesis, really.
A meta framework.
What Lillian's proposing essentially is a kind of cosmological restoration project.
That restoration project, I like that phrasing.
It's ambitious, no doubt. He's trying to bring these, forgotten dimensions of reality, the stuff usually left to mysticism or philosophy, right back into the heart of science.
So, okay, expect maybe some serious aha moments today, because we're going to connect some big names in science history to their, let's say, lesser-known mystical side, and we'll try to align modern physics concepts with these ancient teachings and really get into this fascinating idea of completing physics. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So Lillian kicks things off by really challenging how we even think about science. He argues that modern science, in its push for empirical clarity, objective data, it deliberately distanced itself from its metaphysical origins.
Yeah, and he insists this wasn't just an accident, like, oops, we forgot something. He claims it was a conscious choice.
Conscious choice.
That's his argument. And that this choice led directly to what he calls a mechanistic and incomplete understanding of the cosmos. It's like science purposefully cut off a limb, leaving behind a crucial way of understanding things.
That's a strong claim. Why does he think this split happened? Was the esoteric stuff just wrong?
Well, that's what's interesting. Lillian says no, it wasn't about irrelevance or lack of validity. He puts it down to a cultural turn away from inner knowledge.
A cultural turn.
Right. As the scientific method got more rigid and, empirical observation became king, anything that seemed subjective or intuitive or spiritual, it got pushed aside, systematically.
So measurement became the only measure of truth, basically.
Pretty much. He argues science essentially banished the soul of the cosmos. It actively cut ties with the esoteric. Mysticism, sacred geometry, asking metaphysical questions, these were dismissed as, irrational, primitive. Science wanted a purely material, predictable universe.
Wow. Banished the soul of the cosmos.
That's quite an image. But historically, it wasn't always like that, was it? Lillian points out that the earliest scientists, they were often mystics themselves.
Exactly. He stresses that they were often bridging the empirical and the ineffable. This wasn't just a footnote in history. We're talking a lineage from, ancient Hermetic arts through Renaissance alchemy,
Right.
all the way to huge figures like Isaac Newton. Newton's private work, Lillian notes, was deep into what he calls alchemical theorems.
Alchemical theorems. Yeah. And understanding this history is crucial because it sets up these, surprising revelations about scientific giants we thought we knew. It suggests their biggest insights might have come from blending the empirical and the esoteric.
So the strict separation we see now is maybe relatively recent in the grand scheme of things.
That's the implication. Lillian reframes the whole history of science narrative. It suggests that for a long time, wanting to understand the universe holistically, the seen and unseen, physical and metaphysical wasn't just common, it was interwoven with science.
So the idea of a sacred dimension wasn't separate, it was maybe the motivation.
In many cases, yes, the framework even. Lillian implies that without seeing that broader picture, our modern science is fundamentally incomplete, like a symphony missing, half the orchestra.
Okay, and this hidden history brings us to these figures Lillian calls reluctant mystics or maybe alchemists of science. And the first big one is Isaac Newton.
Right. Newton, the guy we associate with gravity, calculus, laws of motion, the absolute poster child for rational science.
Yeah, the apple, the whole thing.
But Lillian says, hold on, that's only part of the story, maybe not even the most revealing part.
What was the other part?
Well, Lillian digs into Newton's vast parallel career, a career as a serious student of alchemy, biblical chronology, and divine architecture.
Seriously, not just hobbies.
No, not according to Lillian. Thousands of pages of unpublished writings show systematic study. And here's the kicker. Newton's masterpiece, the Principia, the bedrock of classical physics. Lillian says it was written within a cosmology that viewed nature as divinely encoded.
Whoa, so the physics wasn't separate from the divine for him.
Not at all. For Newton, the laws he found weren't just random rules. They were expressions of God's mind, part of a grand divine design he was trying to figure out.
So his physics was derived from his theology in a way. That flips the script on the usual image of Newton.
Completely. He wasn't just a physicist. He was kind of decrypting the divine blueprint.
And what about the alchemy and this primal ether idea?
Right. Newton believed in a primal ether, not empty space, but a fundamental medium for forces. It's actually quite resonant with, modern field theory, and definitely with the esoteric idea of an etheric plane. And the alchemy. Lillian argues Newton saw it not as superstition, but as a sacred science of elemental unity, a pursuit of coherent transformation.
Coherent transformation?
Yeah, understanding how elements change and unify, it was deeply spiritual for him. Lillian says Newton saw the cosmos as a cosmological coherence machine, where God's mind showed itself through geometry, proportion, natural law. His physics was basically a theological quest.
That's a completely different Newton than the one in the textbooks. Mind-blowing, really. But this thread of the reluctant mystic doesn't stop there, does it? Lillian moves on to Einstein.
Albert Einstein, yeah. He also gets labeled the reluctant mystic.
Okay, Einstein relativity, spacetime, E-IMC-AO. Where does mysticism fit in with him?
Well, even Einstein, despite his huge empirical breakthroughs, had this deep, almost spiritual yearning. He longed for a unified field theory, Lillian says, one that mirrored his intuitive sense of divine order.
So it wasn't just math for him either. It was about finding cosmic harmony.
Exactly. That quest for a single, elegant principle governing everything. Lillian says it aligns remarkably well with esoteric models of spiritual unity. He was looking for that underlying oneness.
And Lillian points to actual evidence for this, right? Not just interpreting his feelings.
He does. He highlights Einstein's correspondence with Rabindranath Tagore, the poet and philosopher.
Oh, I've heard about those conversations.
Yeah, they're fascinating. They apparently show Einstein's openness to consciousness as a participatory element in shaping reality, which is, pretty far from the detached observer idea.
Participatory consciousness.
Okay.
And his issues with quantum mechanics.
Ah, yes. His famous struggle with quantum mechanics, the probability, the weird observer effect. Lillian argues this dilemma foreshadows the esoteric observer problem. Because it raised questions for Einstein about how consciousness interacts with matter, questions that resonate deeply with how esoteric traditions have viewed that relationship for ages. He felt something crucial was missing from quantum theory, something about reality's fundamental nature.
So the very puzzles in physics were pushing him towards these deeper, almost mystical questions. Okay, and then there's David Bohm. Lillian sees him as like the most direct link.
Yeah, Bohm's work, especially his idea of the implicate order, is presented by Lillian as the most direct convergence between modern physics and esoteric thought.
The implicate order, remind me what that is again.
Bohm envisioned it as this deeper, hidden layer of reality where all things are enfolded in one coherent whole. Everything is fundamentally interconnected, just not obviously so in our everyday explicate reality.
Okay. And Lillian connects this to Blavatsky.
Directly. He calls Bohm's implicate order a direct echo of Blavatsky's occult ether.
The occult ether.
Yeah, H.P. Blavatsky, key figure in Theosophy. Her occult ether was this idea of a subtle underlying medium connecting everything, like a cosmic blueprint or information network. Bohm's implicate order provides a kind of physics language for that.
And Bohm also talked about things like non-locality and hollow movement, right? Those sound pretty esoteric even now.
They really do, and Lillian definitely makes that connection. Bohm's non-locality, how particles can be instantly connected across distance, and hollow movement, the idea that everything's part of this flowing, undivided whole.
Yeah.
Lillian says these resonate strongly with ancient Hermetic concepts of as above, so below, that idea of patterns repeating on all scales. He also links them to Alice Bailey's doctrine of the seven rays from Theosophy.
To the seven rays, like fundamental energy types.
Sort of, yeah. Different qualities structuring reality. So Bohm's physics, according to Lillian, gave a scientific framework to these old esoteric ideas about cosmic unity.
And Bohm went even further, right?
Yeah.
About consciousness and matter.
Oh, yeah. This is where Lillian says it gets really interesting. Bohm postulated that consciousness and matter are not separate, but two aspects of a deeper, unified process.
Not separate. That's huge. Challenges basic materialism.
Totally. Lillian states this is identical in essence to Theosophical thought, which sees consciousness as fundamental, not just a product of the brain. Bohm was basically bringing the seemingly mystical view right back into the physics conversation, pushing boundaries.
Okay, so this sets the stage for Lillian's main argument, that these concepts, once dismissed as mystical, are actually increasingly aligned with contemporary scientific theories. It's not just analogy, it's functional alignment.
That's exactly his point. He's saying modern science, digging deeper, is bumping into principles known for ages in esoteric circles. He gives specific examples, like the idea of planes of existence.
Right, like astral planes, mental planes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How does that align with physics?
Well, esoteric traditions talk about these nested layers, from dense matter up to hyperdimensional fields. Lillian argues they map onto dimensional manifolds in M theory, or nested frequency domains in string theory, M theory, and quantum field dynamics.
So not like physical places, but more like different vibrational levels.
Precisely. Think of them as different frequency manifolds or coherent strata, different channels of reality, each vibrating at its own level of organization, its own coherence. Not separate locations, but layered frequencies.
Okay, that's a very different way to think about dimensions. It makes them much more dynamic. What about the etheric body? The aura, life force idea?
In esoteric terms, it's the energetic architecture underlying and sustaining the physical world. Kind of the first layer down from pure potential, structuring biological form, vitality, sometimes felt as subtle body awareness or life force energy.
And the physics connection.
Lillian aligns it with quantum vacuum energy and the zero-point field. The idea is this invisible energy matrix, the etheric, is tied into the quantum foam that's everywhere.
The zero-point field, right? It's moved from the fringe into more mainstream discussion, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. The ZPF is defined as the lowest possible energy state in quantum theory, even at absolute zero. Space isn't empty, it's buzzing with energy. Lillian directly identifies the ZPF with the esoteric etheric substrate of existence.
So the very ground level of quantum energy is the etheric plane, in his view.
Pretty much. In his UCTE framework we'll get to, that he calls the ZPF the surface fluctuation of the etheric plane, saturated with latent coherence. It's not empty, it's full of potential.
And its significance.
For Lillian, it's profound. It's the final harmonic expression of the coherence cascade and the outer boundary of currently measurable physics. Literally where the physical meets the metaphysical, the interface.
Wow. Okay, that grounds these subtle concepts in something potentially measurable, at least at its edge. Now, consciousness, huge sticking point usually. Science often sees it as a brain byproduct, esotericism as fundamental. How does Lillian bridge that?
He totally reframes its role. Consciousness, in his system, returns not as superstition, but as a symmetry coherence operator. And crucially, as a participatory element in shaping reality.
Participatory, like the observer effect in quantum mechanics.
Exactly. He says the observer effect parallels esoteric teachings that consciousness shapes reality.
Right.
In his coherence theory, consciousness isn't a product of matter. It is the primary symmetry coherence operator. It actively sustains order and resonance. It shapes the fabric of the universe.
So consciousness structures reality. It's not just produced by it. That changes everything.
It's a massive shift. It implies our awareness isn't just watching the show. It's involved in writing the script, in a way.
Okay. And then there are torsion fields. These sound interesting. What are they in this context?
Lillian describes them as topological modulations within the coherence field. Think of them like little twists or vortices in the underlying energy field, maybe caused by spin.
Twists, like eddies in a river.
Sort of. They express a relational twist that carries information non-locally across coherence layers. They leave vortical imprints in the etheric medium, like localized patterns of information or energy.
And what do? What's their role? Are they like another force?
He calls them plausible coherence operators. He thinks they may yet become the field operators of the subtle dimensions, meaning they could be how information and energy move through those higher planes we talked about.
So not electromagnetism or gravity, but something else handling subtle information.
That's the idea. They're thought to modulate subtle information beyond standard forces. He even suggests they could potentially underlie non-locality, telepathy, remote healing.
Whoa, okay, that's a big leap. Is there any theoretical physics basis for this?
Lillian points to the Einstein-Cartan theory. It's a modification of general relativity that allows for space-time to have torsion, a kind of twist related to intrinsic angular momentum, or spin. So the maths might allow for it, even if it's not mainstream yet.
Interesting. Okay, a potential physical mechanism. What about the Akashic field, the cosmic library idea?
Right, the Akasha. Esoterically, it's the non-local coherence memory layer that retains the imprint of all resonance events, intentions, and field structures. Like a harmonic library of reality, everything leaves a trace.
And the modern correlate.
Lillian connects it to quantum memory fields. He also points out that quantum entanglement echoes hermetic unity and the Akashic field. The way entangled particles seem linked across space suggests this kind of non-local information storage, which resonates with the Akashic concept.
Like the universe remembers everything, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Are there other alignments he mentions, broader patterns?
Yeah, briefly. He touches on the 7 rays from Theosophy, suggesting they relate conceptually to field symmetry patterns, fundamental ways energy organizes itself, and sacred geometry.
Like the golden ratio, platonic solids?
Exactly. Those precise patterns found in nature and ancient art. Lillian suggests they're mirrored in the field and dimensional structures of his physics, meaning these geometric forms aren't just pretty, they're fundamental to how reality is built, like harmonic codes.
Okay, so all these connections point towards coherence as the big unifying idea. How does Lillian define coherence? It's more than just waves in sync, right?
Oh, definitely. He defines it as the fundamental organizing principle behind all structure, the state of unified vibrational integrity. But the key is his expanded view. It's both physical, as in phase alignment, like a laser, and subjective, as in consciousness, presence, or harmony.
So coherence isn't just physics, it's the quality of organization itself. Across matter and mind, it's the master blueprint.
That's a good way to put it. The master blueprint, the ultimate organizing principle, the invisible glue holding reality together, spanning physical and subjective realms.
Got it. And this is central to his big theory, the HHHCR-ToE. Hypersymmetry, hyperspace, coherence, resonance theory of everything. What's the main goal of this framework?
It's designed as a new meta-framework, specifically to integrate multidimensional coherence, observer function, and sacred geometry. It ties all these threads together.
And its core ideas. You mentioned the observer.
Right. One key tenet. The observer becomes a meta-operator, reducing coherence into structure. Consciousness isn't passive. It actively collapses potential into form, like a cosmic sculptor shaping reality.
So our act of observing creates structure. That's radical.
It is. Another idea. Consciousness is a symmetry coherence field. It's not just in our heads. It's a pervasive field influencing everything. And the etheric body we talked about, it's recast as the first projection from the omnilectic coherence field, the primary energy template for form.
So it brings the subtle body right into the physics.
Directly. And the overall goal, Lillian repeats, is not to dismiss physics, but to complete it, to make it whole by bringing back these missing pieces.
Okay, completing physics. And the HHHCR-ToE is part of an even bigger picture, right? The UCTE.
That's right. UCTE, the Unified Coherence Theory of Everything, is the umbrella theory. It extends HHHCR-ToE to cover not just physics, but also biology, subjectivity, cosmology, and epistemology.
You know, that's everything. Physics, life, mind, the universe, how we know things.
Exactly. Its core assertion is that coherence dynamics structure all phenomena, everything from mass generation to memory to mystical states, all through nested resonance and field interactions. It's aiming for a truly holistic explanation of literally everything, driven by coherence.
Okay. So let's dive deeper into the architecture itself. The HHHCR-ToE, based on Chapter 7 of Lillian's work, he calls it a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
How does it redefine things?
It shifts the goal of unification. Instead of just unifying forces, it argues that coherence, not force alone, is the true basis of all structure, field, and perception. That's a fundamental change.
Coherence is the primary basis.
Yeah, and it aims to restore the role of consciousness, subjectivity, and coherence vacuum architecture in generating reality itself, putting mind and the underlying field back at the center.
Okay, let's walk through the steps of this. Ontological cascade, he calls it. From pure potential to reality. Step 1. The symmetry coherence field. What is that?
He describes it as the undivided field of pre-dimensional potential, the ultimate source. Imagine a state before anything exists, before space, time, matter, energy, pure unity.
So not nothingness, but pure potential.
Exactly. Not nothingness, but rather hypercoherent fullness, the generative reservoir from which all things emerge, a zero entropy, infinite potential layer, like a boundless blank canvas of pure unified potential.
Okay, pure potential. Step 2. The coherence vacuum emerges from this, but it's not empty.
Right. As the symmetry coherence field starts to differentiate, the coherence vacuum appears as the first structured substrate, and crucially not empty. Lillian calls it an ether, but redefined not a mechanical medium, but a hyperfractal coherence manifold.
A hyperfractal coherence manifold.
Yeah, it's the first reduction of the omnicoherent field. Still unified, but now with a subtle structure. This is where Lillian says things like torsion potentials, symmetry attractors, and scalar fields are pre-configured. It's pregnant with potential structures.
And subjectively.
He connects it to deep meditative absorption, that feeling of the field before thought, pure awareness before concepts arise.
Okay, a structured potential, not a void. Then step 3, dimensional condensation and hyperfractal emergence. How do dimensions pop out of this vacuum?
They do not exist a priori, he says. They emerge recursively via the coherence cascade. They aren't fixed boxes. They unfold dynamically.
Recursively, like patterns repeating within patterns.
Exactly. These nested layers form what he calls hyperfractal dimensions, which he claims is a direct match to esoteric descriptions of the subtle planes.
So the physical plane, the etheric, astral, they're like frequencies.
Precisely. The physical plane condenses at the lowest frequency of coherence. Higher planes like etheric, astral, mental, and causal planes reflect increasingly subtle resonance fields. Each plane is a coherence manifold embedded within a fractal recursion of nested fields. Different vibrational layers, not separate places. It's an alternative to standard model dimensions, offering a dynamic, emergent structure.
Okay, dimensions unfolding like frequencies. Step 4 sounds critical. The meta-operator, what's that?
He calls it the universal engine of reality. It's not one thing, but the interplay of observer function, asymmetry resonance, and consciousness, symmetry coherence.
Observer function and consciousness working together. How?
The observer function acts as a reduction operator, collapsing or differentiating potentials into structured states, like the logos in esoteric thought, the architect giving form. Consciousness, on the other hand, sustains coherence, symmetry, and resonance. It's the field of awareness beyond reduction, the ontological sustainer.
And the key is their interaction.
Yes, Lillian stresses. Wherever observation and coherence interact, the field becomes structured. Our conscious observation interacting with the coherent field is what actually brings specific reality into being.
Our participation is literally creative. Okay, step 5. Planes of existence, etheric structuring, and torsion. How do the planes actually unfold?
As the meta-operator creates structure, distinct planes of existence unfold. The very first to appear is the etheric plane, a scalar phase template that precedes biology, sensation, or form, the energetic blueprint.
And within that etheric plane, torsion happens.
Yes, that's where torsion functions form, localized topological twists that encode memory, intention, or field intelligence. These aren't just random twists, they carry information.
And they act like routers.
Exactly. He calls them coherence routers, directing how information, phase states, and attention flow through the nested fields, like directing traffic on the cosmic information highway.
And how might we see or feel these?
Physically, maybe as spin-generated curvature anomalies, esoterically as energy knots, chakra vortices, or meridian inflections, subjectively perhaps as those moments of shifts, surges, or directed will, when intention seems to have a tangible effect. Same principle, different scales.
Okay, that connects the dots. Step 6. The zero-point field as etheric echo. We touched on it, but how does it fit here at the bottom of the cascade?
It's located at the lowest frequency threshold of the etheric plane, and again, not a void, but the coherence residue of higher fields still pulsing with latent potential.
The residue, like the echo of the higher planes.
Kind of. It's the final harmonic expression of the coherence cascade and the outer boundary of currently measurable physics. This is where quantum field fluctuations encode the residual dance of coherent structures. It's the direct interface, where the subtle becomes physically measurable quantum buzz.
The boundary layer. Got it. And finally, step 7, the culmination. Unified coherence theory and esoteric completion. What's the ultimate payoff?
This whole process culminates in UCTE, and Lillian argues UCTE doesn't just unify forces like physics wants. It unifies states of being, fields of coherence, and modes of subjectivity, much bigger scope.
Unifying everything, really.
That's the goal. He claims through UCTE, physics regains its esoteric foundation, it remembers its roots. Metaphysics gains experimental grounding, its ideas become testable potentially, and crucially, consciousness is restored as a primary structuring principle. It's about healing that historical split.
Okay, let's quickly recap that 7-step flow. It starts with
1. The symmetry coherence field, pure, undivided potential.
then differentiates into
2. The coherence vacuum, the redefined hyperfractal ether full of potential.
from which emerges
Dimensional condensation, the hyperfractal cascade creating planes as frequencies.
activated by
4. The meta-operator, the interplay of consciousness and observer function, structuring reality.
leading to
Emergence of planes like the etheric with specific structures.
simultaneity.
6. Torsion signatures and ether patterns, the coherence routers.
And finally stabilizing down to
7. The zero-point field, the lowest coherence threshold, the quantum interface. From pure potential to physical reality, all driven by coherence.
an incredible journey. This brings us right to Lillian's core theme, the return of the sacred in science, a cosmological restoration. He keeps coming back to that schism.
He does. He acknowledges the tremendous insight and power from empirical science, of course, but insists it came at the cost of a profound schism, cutting ties with those esoteric roots.
And this return, this convergence we're seeing, he says it's not luck.
No, he calls it ontological memory, the return of the sacred under new names. Like reality itself is pushing these ideas back into our awareness. He even argues the 20th century scientific model focused on fragmentation, reductionism, entropy didn't reflect the universe itself.
What did it reflect then?
He claims it reflected our loss of coherence with the universe. Our fractured worldview created a fractured science.
Wow. That's a bold statement. What were the specific consequences of this reductionist view, according to him? What did we lose sight of?
He lists them out. The observer was externalized, made separate and objective, not part of the system. Matter was reified, consciousness dismissed as just a brain function. Time was linearized, space stripped of vitality, becoming just an empty stage. And fundamentally, the sacred was expelled from cosmology. Purpose, meaning spirit, removed from the scientific picture.
And he thinks these were choices, not discoveries.
Epistemological choices, he calls them, that shaped our whole view. The truth, he argues, is that reality was never mechanistic. It was always coherent, resonant, and alive.
And now this sacred element is coming back, but framed differently. Not as belief, but as architecture.
Exactly. What we once called sacred now reemerges, not as belief, but as coherence architecture, from symbol to system. He gives direct translations.
Okay, like what?
The Akashic record becomes the coherence memory field phase-stable harmonics, information stored non-locally in vibrations. The etheric body is the scalar template field zero-point scaffold, the energy blueprint. Chakras' energy centers are torsion, vortex nodes, phase resonance loci, points of energy exchange.
And the planes of existence.
Those are the hyperfractal dimensional manifolds. Even something like ritual magic is reframed as coherence modulation via symbolic operators, using symbols to influence fields.
Wow. And the divine mind.
That corresponds to the meta-operator structuring via observer coherence. And sacred geometry becomes the harmonic code templates for dimensional structuring, the fundamental blueprints.
So these aren't just metaphors anymore. He sees them as actual functional structures.
That's his point. He insists these are not poetic metaphors, but field structures that now appear across disciplines. Quantum physics, information theory, even neuroscience and bioresonance. He sees the same underlying patterns emerging everywhere.
And right at the center of it all, again, is consciousness.
Yeah.
Ontological primacy. It's the foundation.
Absolutely fundamental. Under UCTE, consciousness is not a product of complexity, but the primal coherence operator. It's not an afterthought. It's the source.
He says it precedes form, it sustains fields, it structures time. That's incredibly powerful.
It is. It's the ground of being itself, enabling everything else.
How does it operate within UCTE? What are its roles?
He outlines them clearly. In the symmetry coherence field, it exists as pure unity, undifferentiated potential. Through the meta-operator, it enters interaction, becoming active in creation. Through the observer function, it collapses potential into form, manifesting reality. And fascinatingly, through ritual logic, it programs reality via resonance.
Programs reality. using intention and symbols.
That's the implication. It's what he calls ontological symmetry physics. Not mysticism, but the physics of being. He concludes, consciousness is coherence made aware of itself. The universe knowing itself through awareness.
Coherence made aware of itself. That's beautiful, actually. So if this is right, science itself becomes a sacred restoration, a healing process.
The implications are huge. Physics becomes about resonance, intention, and intelligent structure, not just particles. Biology becomes coherence maintained across nested membranes, not just code. Space becomes a coherence medium capable of memory, transmission, and emergence, not just emptiness.
It changes the whole feeling of science, makes it alive, interconnected.
Completely. Lillian insists UCTE is not an alternative to science, it is the completion of it. It restores the sacred by revealing the deep truths already encoded in the structure of reality, if we learn to see again with coherent eyes. It's about shifting our perception.
Okay, so how do we move forward? What are the practical applications he suggests? How do we start seeing with coherent eyes?
Well, first, we need to acknowledge the observer not as a nuisance, but as an operator of reality structuring. Our participation matters.
So embrace subjectivity in science.
In a way, yes. Redefine measurement as a form of coherence reduction, not collapse, but participation. We're involved. Integrate subjective experience into models not as noise, but as signal. Treat it as valid data.
That alone is revolutionary for science.
It is. Then explore sacred geometries, harmonic codes, and torsion functions as coherence tools. Not fringe, but fundamental. Actively research how these work. Restore ritual, symbol, myth as programming languages, not of superstition, but of scalar influence.
Programming languages for reality.
That's the idea. Understand things like healing, intention, prayer not as magic, but as field modulations, meta-operators of coherence. Ways to intentionally influence the underlying structure. It opens up research into areas previously considered off-limits.
So we've journeyed through quite a landscape here, from ancient esoteric ideas to potentially cutting-edge physics, suggesting maybe they're converging on one unified reality. This dive into Lillian's esoteric coherence physics paints a picture where, as he says, there is no real separation between physics and metaphysics, only the veils of reductionism and the dogmas of disconnection.
It's definitely a powerful and, provocative vision. It suggests that maybe science, as it gets more sophisticated, is actually circling back to fundamental truths that were understood differently, perhaps more intuitively, long ago. Lillian really challenges us to think if the answers we're seeking aren't already here, just obscured by how we've been taught to look.
So the final thought for you listening is this. If consciousness is a primary structuring principle, if reality truly emerges from coherence, as Lillian proposes, what role, then, do your own thoughts, your intentions, your state of awareness play in the world you experience? What might it actually mean to see again with coherent eyes? To perceive the hidden connections and the living patterns that Lillian argues form the true architecture of reality, something to really ponder.